Captain, something's coming in on the Starfleet channel. Priority and urgency.
Put it on audio over here, Lieutenant.
I know we were supposed to set course for the Delta Quadrant, but it has come time to admit that I am 1/10 Vulcan. That's right. We must alter course because the time has come. AMOK time.
What is this?
As one viewer suggested, we're going to stay comfortable in Star Trek the original series and examine the season 2 episode AMOK Time. Now, I've never been quite clear if it's supposed to be said AMOK Time or AMOK Time. Either which way, it is crazy time, and the way I'm feeling right now, it is definitely time for some AMOK because I'm going through... You know what I'm talking about, yeah. Alter course to Vulcan and welcome back to Sci-Fi Wire's Warp Factor Classic Blend. AMOK, 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 AMOK. Engage! Prepare for a mission briefing! Prepare for a mission briefing. I can do it. This episode first aired in 1967, but if you haven't seen it, then it's new to you. If you're really waiting for the right time to watch it fresh, then all crew to spoiler station, shields up, and because 1967, yellow alert, Mr. Spock is going berserk. The great Leonard Nimoy is having personal Vulcan issues, and he refuses to talk about them.
Cannot. No Vulcan could.
He has to return to Vulcan, and he's not taking no for an answer. Who's there to help him out? His good friends, Captain James T. Kirk and Leonard Bones McCoy, of course. After diverting course a few million times, with Spock not being aware that he's actually changed the course,
I think I'm going to get spacey.
Dr. McCoy examines Spock and finds that he is suffering from extreme stresses, the likes of which would kill a regular human.
You'll die, Jim.
Spock, remember, after all, is half human, but he will die in 8 days unless they get him to Vulcan. After some pumping and prodding from Kirk, Spock lays out the personal tea. From time to time, Vulcans have to return home to mate.
It has to do with biology.
Kirk identifies, not that he ever needs much of a reason to do that. He can just return home to mate whenever he wants. He's a literally part salmon. Is that reference scan? I don't know. It is called farr, and it is not discussed openly even by Vulcans themselves, as they are shamed by these base desires. Kirk disobeys a direct order and hits the gas to get Mr. Spock to Vulcan.
Laying a course for Vulcan.
Course already plotted. Laying it in, sir.
Sorry, people of Altair. Upon arrival, the ship is greeted by T'Pring, a Vulcan female who Spock calls his wife. Everyone is shocked, especially poor Nurse Chapel. It was an arranged marriage that was arranged back when Spock was 7, and this bonding, as Spock calls it, is less than a marriage, but more than a betrothal. A telepathic mating bond was also in the mix. Okay. The marriage ritual is going to commence, overseen by the Vulcan T'Pau, who once turned down an offer to sit on the Federation Council. So did I. Respect. But T'Pring stops it and says she'd rather die than go through with it. Harsh. There are nicer ways to do that, T'Pring. Spock now has to physically fight for T'Pring, and who does T'Pring choose as her companion? James
Tiberius Kirk.
Great. Another Vulcan named Stan is also pissed off because he is T'Pring's actual love, and she feels the same way. Doesn't matter. Someone tosses Kirk a lurpa and tells him to fight up. Spock has much more physical strength thanks to him being used to the Vulcan environment, but McCoy injects Kirk with something to compensate. It doesn't matter. Spock apparently kills Kirk, and Spock's urges to mate subside. Okay. T'Pring is now free to marry Stan, and says she logically chose Kirk to fight because she would have gotten what she wanted either way things shook out. Good one to Pring. Spock prepares to turn himself in for killing his captain. He tries to put Scotty in command and won't listen to anyone, and that's before a very much alive Captain Kirk struts in. Spock actually smiles with joy at seeing his good friend Jim, and it is revealed that McCoy actually injected Kirk with a substance to simulate death back on the planet.
He slipped in a neural paralyzer. Knocked me out.
Bones. When questioned, Spock says that he no longer had any interest in marrying T'Pring after he thought he had killed Kirk, who also gets absolved of his earlier course correction thanks to T'Pau.
As for diversion of Enterprise to planet Vulcan, hereby approved. Any reasonable delay granted.
Okay.
Look at his eyes uncovered!
Does this episode add all kinds of secrets and lore to the canon of Trek? Did Michael Eddington betray his uniform?
You betrayed your uniform!
And you're betraying yours right now.
Like I'm gonna argue with that. A big yes to both questions. This is the first time the series went to the planet Vulcan and the first time we ever saw Vulcans other than Spock. Once again, saving money on prosthetic ears, many of the Vulcans here wear ear-hiding helmets similar to the ones we saw Romulans wear earlier in the series. They're not the same helmets, but same idea. This is the first time we saw the famous Vulcan salute, which was recently promoted as an alternative to the high five for National High Five Day. It was also the first time that we heard one of the most famous Trek catchphrases of all.
Live long, T'Pau, and prosper.
The look of the planet Vulcan was changed slightly for this remastered version of this episode, so it would resemble how the planet looks when we revisit it in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. They opted for that look rather than the really trippy craziness that we see briefly at the start of Star Trek: The Motion Picture during the Colon sequence. I did like that look though. This is quite far from the last we'd hear of Pon farr. A regrowing Spock would deal with it again on the Genesis planet in Star Trek III, and Lieutenant Saavik would help him through that. Cuckoo-choo, Lieutenant Saavik. T'Pol would deal with it on Star Trek Enterprise in the episode Bounty, and her Mirror Universe counterpart dealt with it by getting it on repeatedly with the Mirror Universe Trip Tucker in a Mirror Darkly. Wings of the Heart! Yeah! Over on Star Trek Voyager, Tuvok didn't have the luxury to return to Vulcan to mate with his wife T'Pel because stranded in the Delta Quadrant, so they had to get creative in that episode with some holograms in body and soul. Ensign Vorik, also on Voyager, had similar issues, and he tried to deal with it by attempting to mate with B'Elanna Torres.
Let me take this opportunity to declare Kunant Salik, my desire to become your mate.
What?
It did not go well. The concept of arranged Vulcan marriages came up again on Star Trek Enterprise, with T'Pol having an arranged marriage to a Vulcan named Kos. I never had an arranged marriage, so thanks a lot, Mom and Dad. Before T'Pol was conceived for that series, the idea was floated to use a young T'Pau in her place. This didn't work out, but a young T'Pau is eventually featured in the Enterprise episodes The Forge, Awakening, and Kirshara, and a holographic version of the character is seen in the Voyager episode Darkling. To Snap, To Bone, and To Bong would never make it onto any Trek series, likely because I just made them up just now. Finally, Spock's famous smile at seeing Jim live at the end of this episode is a rare scene where Spock shows emotion. The Short Treks episode Q&A, which chronologically takes place before this episode but was shot afterwards, retroactively gives us a possible reason for why we don't see this smile more often. In the short, number one tells a young Spock that if he wants to command, he's gonna have to learn to keep his freaky to himself, even if that's painful. Something I myself have had to learn rather unsuccessfully. Moments of smiling Spock, such as this, and those seen in the menagerie when he's smiling about flowers, are the result of Spock failing to keep his freaky in check. Number one herself can recite Gilbert and Sullivan at the drop of a hat, but aspiring commanders have to keep that kind of thing inside. So it goes with Spock, and his displays of emotion about anything and everything, really, are very limited from this point forward.
Earl Grey never fails.
Earl Grey never fails. And AMOK Time doesn't fail to give us classic quotes. The final scene with Kirk, Bones, and Spock is a classic that solidifies them as a trio for the ages, but Spock's parting insight to Stan stands out a little bit more, with him saying, "You may find
that having is not so pleasing a thing after all as wanting. It is not logical, but it is often true."
I identify. The biggest and best quote of them all, however, has to be a line that has come to represent Trek as a whole, and this was the first time that we ever heard it said.
Live long, T'Pau, and prosper.
Live long and prosper, Spock.
Live long and prosper indeed. Will Earl Grey ever fail? Pig's eye. There are no main Vulcan crew members on Star Trek Picard, but on Star Trek Discovery, Michael Burnham is a human who was raised as a Vulcan, so she could always give us a mention of something that began in this episode down the line. We've already gotten name drops of other parts of Vulcan mysticism through her, including the notion of Katra, as well as what she called a Vulcan hello. The Vulcan hello might be the way some Vulcans deal with farr. Who's to say? Speaking of giving inappropriate hellos, Crusher Watch! Not in this episode, not born yet, and that is a valid excuse. To be clear, I am not obsessed with Beverly Crusher. I am obsessed with the idea of her and Jean-Luc Picard being together. Is that a good reason to continue doing this segment? Yes, yes it is. The two of them are bound for the Kunut Caliphate. Don't try and change my mind.
Hailing frequencies open.
Our hailing frequencies are now open. Be sure to let us know what your thoughts are on AMOK Time, and be sure to call out other episodes that you'd like to see us cover in the future. You've already called out so many great ones, we have no shortage of episodes to pick from. One viewer specifically asked about Mirror Mirror, but I don't think I'm up for a trip to the Mirror Universe just yet. The good news is that this episode has taken care of my farr. Maybe I was just really bored. I don't know. Anyway, now I think we can proceed as planned to the Delta Quadrant.
There's coffee in that nebula.
Damn right. Now let me just make sure my makeshift transporter is good to go. Yep, we're set to record. Transporter. Wait, this isn't good. I'm getting a signal. Oh, no.
Where am I? What kind of luxurious show is this? I'm guessing you want me to read off this screen right here, huh? Yeah. Blue skies, whatever that means. I will do nothing of the kind until you send me back through the looking glass where I came from. In the meantime, I suppose, might as well have some fun while I'm here.